This morning, we're going to focus on that gospel reading from Mark chapter 10, in which Jesus gives the third and final passion prediction to his disciples. In other words, it's the third time that he's going to tell them exactly what he came to earth to do. And he redefines greatness from the way the world thinks about it, trophies, to the way God thinks about it, service, sacrifice, paying the price for the sin of the world on a cross, and then rising victorious on the third day. As we look at this passage today, we're almost at Easter, as I said to the kids, and you already know it, right? 2 weeks to Easter, 2 weeks from this Sunday. And so there's a lot of things that go into Holy Week. Holy Week is the most important week in the life of a Christian. Okay, we're going to remember how Jesus entered Jerusalem on Palm Sunday next week on Sunday. We'll have some palm branches here and little palm branch activity for the kids during the Easter egg hunt, as well as singing some songs and doing the Easter egg hunt up through 5th grade. So we have that to look forward to. And then, of course, it's Maundy Thursday, and we remember how Jesus instituted the Lord's Supper and he taught his disciples and celebrated the Passover with him. But then that same night, he went out to the Garden of Gethsemane and was praying, and then Judas arrived and betrayed him and basically sold him out for the price of 30 pieces of silver. And then Jesus is taken to those false trials, and finally, Good Friday, put on the cross. And those services at 1:30 and 6:30 p.m. here at Peace are services of darkness, where we darken the church and remember how Jesus' life was taken from him, and actually as he gave it voluntarily to pay the price for our sins and to bring us salvation. And then, of course, Easter Sunday, we get to celebrate, right? We fill the front of the church with flowers, and many of you donated flowers. Thank you for doing that. And we have special music and all kinds of stuff going on, our Easter breakfast. So it's almost that time. But to me, it's always amazing that people can celebrate Easter without ever getting to the cross and ever getting to the open tomb of Easter morning. In other words, they just kind of get stuck in the Easter bunny, Easter baskets, Easter candy, Easter eggs, Easter dinner, and they never quite make it to the cross. Now, by the way, those things, Easter eggs, Easter candy, Easter baskets, those are okay. They're fine. I like to celebrate with those things too, but we also have to make sure we get to the cross, right? We have to get to the cross where Jesus poured out his life to bring salvation to this world out of his great love and service and sacrifice. So in today's gospel reading, we see Jesus trying to fill in his disciples. He's trying to teach his disciples exactly what's going to happen to him when he gets to Jerusalem. They are on their way to Jerusalem. They're at the end of their 3rd year of ministry together. And Jesus is not holding anything back. He's telling them for the 3rd time exactly what he came to do. So today, what we find out is the disciples are kind of stuck with the Easter baskets, the Easter bunny, Easter eggs, Easter candy, and Easter dinner, and they're missing the cross, and they're missing the open tomb. They just don't quite get it yet. They think Jesus came to establish an earthly kingdom with all kinds of trophies to hand out, especially to them. And that's not what it's about. Okay, so today I want to basically divide this up into 3 parts. Trinitarian sermon, right? Now here's the interesting thing. Jesus gave 3 predictions of his suffering and death and resurrection. 3 of them. Mark chapter 8, Mark chapter 9, Mark chapter 10. These are also in Matthew, by the way, too, and Luke. So Mark chapter 8, 9, and 10. And in these 3 predictions, we find out there's a 3-part kind of part to each one. And here's how it's going to kind of, how it's revealed to us. First, there's the prediction of what would happen. So in Mark chapter 8, Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the teachers and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. That's Mark 8, verse 31. And then in verse 32 it says, he taught them plainly. He said to this plainly. In other words, he didn't tell a parable that they had to figure out. He didn't give them a puzzle to solve. He didn't, act it out. He just said, here's what's going to happen when we get to Jerusalem. I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to die, but I'll rise on the third day. In Mark chapter 9, the very next chapter, Jesus is quoted as saying, the Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and when he is killed, after 3 days he will rise. Again, pretty simple, right? One sentence explanation of what all this 3 years of ministry is going to culminate in. Death and resurrection. And then there's today's, from Mark chapter 10, verses 32 through 34. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him, saying, see, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man, that's his messianic title from the Old Testament, book of Daniel, will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles, and they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. You see how he got even more intense in his prediction by the third time? By Mark chapter 10? But here's kind of the amazing thing. The disciples still didn't get it. They didn't understand. Or maybe they just didn't want to listen to what Jesus had to say. They didn't want to go to the cross. They didn't want to see Jesus on a cross. And they didn't want to go to the resurrection, which would follow. So first we have the prediction, but then the very next thing that happens is we end up with a rebuke. A rebuke because they didn't get it, and they had their minds in the wrong location, and so Jesus had to rebuke them. And some of this, again, you're pretty familiar with this. Some of this was in our scripture readings over the last few weeks, the gospel reading. For instance, in Mark chapter 8, after Jesus gave the first passion prediction, the suffering and death prediction, Peter came up to him and said, we'll never let that happen to you, Jesus. Never. And remember what Jesus said? Get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of man. So he got rebuked. In the second one, Mark chapter 9, they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, what were you discussing on the way? This was after he gave them the second prediction of his death and resurrection. But they kept silent, for on the way they had argued with one another about who was the greatest. So Jesus once again said, here's what we're going to go do. We're going to Jerusalem. I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to suffer and be put on a cross, and I'm going to die, but on the third day I'll rise. And their response was, wow, we can't wait to get to Jerusalem and find out who's going to be the greatest of us. Who's going to get the trophies? Who's going to get the positions of power? And then you would think by this point, maybe it would start to sink in. But no. In today's gospel reading in Mark chapter 10, Jesus gave them the third prediction. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be handed over to the religious leaders. They are going to abuse me, mock me, flog me, spit on me, and then kill me. But the third day I'm going to rise. Then what happens? James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to Jesus and said to him, Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you. And he said to them, what do you want me to do for you? And they said to him, grant us to sit one on your right hand and one on your left in your glory. Jesus said, you don't know what you're asking. And then he said, can you drink the cup I'm going to be drinking from? Which means the cup of God's wrath. When I'm on the cross suffering, are you willing to drink that cup? And they said, yes, we can drink that cup. And then he said, are you willing to be baptized with the baptism I'm baptized with? Because I'm baptized in order to go to a cross and suffer and die for the sin of the world. And they were like, oh yeah, we can do what you're doing, Jesus. They didn't get it. They didn't understand. And so Jesus once again had to rebuke them because they're looking for trophies, positions of authority and power over others. They thought that's why we're going to Jerusalem. But instead, that was the opposite. Suffering, sacrifice, service, death. So what happens in the third part of these passion predictions is that Jesus continues with some additional teaching. In other words, Jesus takes them down kind of into a deeper sense of discipleship. Now, I talked about this a few weeks ago, too, in the sermon. But you see it in each of these passion predictions. Jesus gives them the truth. They don't understand it. They're looking for glory. And now he has to take them to a deeper level. You know, like now you're in college, disciples, and you have to learn what this is really all about. We're getting to the end of your teaching time. Confirmation's on the horizon. You got to be ready. I'm going to be leaving you. You're taking over. So here's what he says. In Mark chapter 8, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. So here's the further teaching, is you're going to take up your cross too. Now again, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but you're going to have to carry your cross. You're going to go through some suffering. You're going to go through some difficult times as one of my followers. It's not about fortune and glory. It's not about trophies. Mark chapter 9, after rebuking the disciples about their discussion of greatness, he said, if anyone would be first, he must be last and servant of all. That's what it is really about, being a follower of Jesus. Being a servant. Servant leadership. And then in today's gospel reading, after once again James and John are arguing about places of greatness, after the third time Jesus predicted his death and resurrection, he follows up with this teaching. He says, you know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them, but it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So each of the three predictions gets more intense, followed by a response of misunderstanding that gets rebuked, and then we have the deeper teaching. Here's what it's really all about. By the way, did you notice in the last bit of teaching, Jesus takes it a step further. I mean, in the second one, in Mark 9, he says, we're going to be servants of all. But then in this one, he says, not only will you be a servant, but you're going to be a slave of all. Slave of all? Nobody wants to be a slave. I mean, the Jews didn't want to be a slave. They were in slavery in Egypt for 400 years. That was a bad part of their history. They don't want to relive that. The Romans didn't want to be slaved. In fact, it was insulting for them to even think they could be slave of anyone. They were in power. So the slave language was completely over the head of the disciples as they were listening. And yet we are called as followers of Jesus to serve and even be a slave of others. Because that's what Jesus did for us. Let's talk about that. Okay, how does this apply to us? Right? What's the prediction that God has given for your future as a follower of Jesus? Just to remind you, here's the prediction. You're going to die. That's part of it. Secondly, you've been forgiven of your sins through faith in Jesus. That means you don't have to fear death. And God has prepared a place for you in heaven. And he says in John chapter 14 that he's going to come back and take you to be with him. So, again, nothing to fear. So you have, through faith in Jesus, victory over death and the grave. We're going to celebrate that in 2 weeks on Easter Sunday. You've got a Savior who's with you all the time. Your sins are forgiven. You have a place in heaven. You know where you're going. But what do we spend our time worrying about in this life? What's making you stay awake at night? What do you think about? What are you focused on? So here comes the rebuke. We get caught up in the things of this world. They take on a much higher priority and focus than really they should. Here's just a couple examples, okay? So in the last few days, what have you been talking about? If you're a sports fan, you might have been talking about, I can't believe that the Packers didn't re-sign Aaron Jones. And you know where he ended up? He ended up with the Vikings, of all places. They signed him. I mean, couldn't we shell out the $7 million they signed him for? And by the way, Mr. Thompson and I have this discussion in the office at Peace Lutheran, because he's a Vikings fan. Or it might be something like this. Did you watch the Badgers' overtime victory over Purdue yesterday? Wasn't that fantastic? I mean, that was so great. I had to go back and watch that, replay about 3 times. Or maybe it's not sports at all. Maybe you're thinking, wow, I got to keep an eye on the stock market. It's not too many years, and I'm going to retire. And I got to know how my portfolio's doing. Because, boy, I have to have enough money when I'm retired. Am I going to outlive my money? Maybe that's your train of thought. Or maybe it's the presidential election. What do you think about these 2 old white guys running against each other again? Okay, we're not going to talk about that right now. But my prediction is, or my sense is, because I'm one of you, is that we spend a whole lot more time talking about that kind of stuff than we do about, hey, what's God been up to in your life lately? How have you seen God at work in your life? How has God done something even through your difficult times to increase and grow you in your faith? How has he brought somebody across your path that really has bolstered you in your relationship to God? What have you learned from his word lately in the Bible? And I think we've handed out those devotions for Lent and things. Hey, what have you picked up out doing your Lenten devotion? Do you ever talk about that? Do we ever discuss that with our spouse or our family or anybody our coworkers? Maybe we do. But I just have a feeling that we get stuck, like the disciples did, on the stuff of this world, going for the trophies in life instead of, well, maybe God's brought me through some sacrifice or led me to serve others that need some real help to do that in his name. We force ourselves here at Peace Lutheran in our staff meetings and stuff, to take 10 minutes to just talk about God stuff in our own lives, in our personal lives, just to get us thinking that way and to help us to remember that's really what it's all about. It's not the stuff of this world that often takes up our time. So what's the teaching? So the teaching is, I think Jesus gives us the teaching, right? Jesus redefines greatness. It's not about wealth, power, trophies, and wins. It's about humility, service, sacrifice. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. Whoever would be first among you must be slave of all, Jesus said. And then he went on to say, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. That ransom language is kind of slave language. Jesus bought us at a price, and the price was his blood and his death on a cross, so that we could be his own, so we could live under him in his kingdom, as it says in the explanation of the creed, and that we can serve others in his name and show others Jesus through our words and actions. Isn't that what it's really all about? Isn't that great? If that's what we're pursuing, there's true greatness, right? That God calls us to live out. As we go to Easter, I hope if you have kids, or like me and Shelley, we've got grandkids, so now we hadn't had to think about Easter baskets for quite a while. Now we're like, should we hide Easter baskets, have grandkids over? So have the Easter baskets and the Easter bunny and the Easter candy and the Easter dinner. That's all good stuff. But let's make sure we go to the cross together. Let's see what Jesus has done for us. And then let's see his great victory on Easter morning, his resurrection, because that redefines our life, right? Refocuses us on the things of God. May God grant this in Jesus' name. Amen. Please stand. Now may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Amen.